Okay, we're all set.
Okay. Good evening. It's Monday, August 10th, 2020. This is the Operations Committee meeting of the Guilford Board of Education. First item of business are the minutes of July 13th. Has anybody got any comments on those? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
So a motion from Mrs. Sullivan and a second from Dr. Hirsch and a third from Mrs. Rader.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? All right, that carries. Any comments on the Standing Building Committee minutes? Hearing none, then let's move on to the financial stuff. And conveniently, I am the reviewer for the month. So let's get right into it. Let's start with the financial reports for fiscal 2019 and 20. We ended up the year in July, we had expenditures of $220,811.33. These are all receipts that, bills that came in late. Expenditures and encumbrances through the end of the year were 99.58% of budget as it compared to 99.97 last year. The good news is we ended the fiscal year with unexpended funds of $254,644.53. And I would say that Paul and Jason and especially Linda did a superb job in managing to get that kind of a number. I was very impressed with that. Hopefully the town will be happy too, since we told them 200 to 225, we exceeded that. In the accounts, there were a couple of things that I questioned about. In the expenditures, not the warrants, but the stuff that we actually paid out, I noticed that there was a $33,000 that wasn't spent on the pension line. And it turns out that we put all the money that was allocated into the pension, but that account also has fees to the actuaries and payments into some of the defined benefit accounts. And since we changed actuaries, we ended up saving some money this year. So that was good news. The tuition line was, I almost had to get my smelling salts out here. The tuition line, we ended up with almost $109,000 surplus for the year, which, as long as I've been on the board, I've never seen anything like it. And the explanation was that some of the students graduated early. They had the option to do that, and so they stopped going to whatever they were going to on tuition. And then there was some confusion about the billing for the Strives program, which is a 18 to 21 year old program for students with learning disabilities that we do jointly with Madison and Clinton. And we had budgeted 6 spots, but they only charged us for 4. So we ended up with some money back on that. So once again, a nice outcome. Looking at the supplies and material line, obviously, because the schools were closed, we ran a surplus in the building and teaching line of $135,000, which was partially offset by $114,000 overage in the custodian's account, which is obviously for COVID supplies, some of which Linda tells me we may be eligible for FEMA reimbursement, but that seems to be kind of hard to predict right now. So she's been conservative on that one. We went over on the fuel line, and this was particularly caused by, I guess you could call it, it was under budgeted, or maybe we just made a mistake in calculating how much diesel these buses were going to use. We knew what they were going to do, but we just used the wrong calculation. And we had a significant overrun on the special education buses, and that was a change to student needs. Several students that we had planned to send on this, jointly on the same bus for a variety of medical reasons, we ended up having to separate and have separate buses and nurses, et cetera, for them. And so that was a problem. That was partially offset by some discounts we got from the bus company, but we still ended up with an overage. If we go to the warrants, the first item in the warrants is an ACES invoice for September of 2020, and that turned out to be a typo. That should have been for September of 2019. And I didn't have any other questions with respect to the relatively small amount of warrants that were outstanding. So any questions from the committee with respect to the July financials, which close out the 2019-2020 year? Yes, Kate.
Yeah, I just have a quick question, I guess for Linda. If that first item on the warrant is a September 2019, that's just a delayed bill? I mean, that's a pretty late bill.
It was a bill that we never received, and
Okay.
Going back through, ACES suddenly discovered that we hadn't paid it.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. I would like to note that these are unaudited financials. So while this is where I think we stand right now, once we go through the audit, this might change slightly. I don't expect any major changes at all to this, but I just want to point it out that there is a possibility that these could change.
Well, I mean, we may get some reimbursement from FEMA for some of this stuff that the custodians spent money on, couldn't we?
Right.
Okay. Any other questions for Linda or Jason?
I just had one quick question. It's
Yes.
probably an easy explanation. On page 3, Guilford High School, the school play reimbursement. Obviously, the play didn't happen. It was for $30-something thousand. So Linda, that's just us being reimbursed for whatever outlay there was for the play. I just want to know what that money is.
Yeah, we were reimbursing the account, the theater account. They had expended significant dollars preparing for the play that never occurred.
Yeah, okay.
And so they would usually lay out the money early in the process, make that money up, and then some in ticket sales. They had the expenditures, but no ticket sales. So we reimbursed a portion of that so that this year, if we have the opportunity, they're not broke and that they have some monies to
Okay.
begin their process with.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. So let's move on to 2020 and 2020, 21. So this is the first month. And the expenditures were $3,413,060.90. And the expenditures through the end of July were 7.14% of budget as compared to 7% previous year. So let's go to the things here. The first thing caught my eye was the school administration line on salaries. And that's primarily caused by the fact that we have an overlap of the principals so that we're really carrying into the fall 2 principals at the high school.
Correct. We've built in a transition overlap.
Yeah. So that was anticipated, but that's why that stands out.
Well, the other portion of that is last year at this time, we did not have 2 principals in place. So we did not have Michelle and Kenesha. So the salaries for them weren't paid until August. So that also throws off the comparison. It makes last year's a lot lower. The additional principal makes this year higher.
Okay, that's right, Linda. Under supplies and materials, obviously the thing that stands out are the custodial supplies where we have used up the whole year in July. But it turns out that this account at the moment includes all of the COVID-related supplies in addition to all the personal protective equipment and the masks and all this other stuff is in there with it at the moment, commingled with what the custodians would normally be ordering. Linda tells me that going forward, she's going to break out a separate line for some of these COVID expenses. So I think it'll make a lot more sense as we go forward on that. On the warrants, the Connecticut Center for School Change, no, I'm sorry, that's the wrong line. Here we go, Connecticut Library Consortium. Turnitin turns out to be a software program that the schools use to check for plagiarism. And it's a renewal of the software license.
It serves other functions besides that, but yes, that is one of the functions that it serves, correct?
Okay. And under Proquest Information Learning, Adams Sears Researcher, it turns out that this is an online software that acts sort of as an encyclopedia or like a more more vetted Wikipedia that students can use to expedite research, since we don't subscribe to encyclopedias and those kinds of reference books anymore. And on the treasurer town of Guilford, you'll notice that the payment for the medical is down significantly from what we were paying last year, and this is in line with the budget and the predictions of our consultants. So are there other questions with respect to the July financials for the current fiscal year? Come on, somebody must have some questions.
Nothing wrong with a quick meeting, Mr. Sands.
Well, no, I'm certainly a big believer in that. Okay, well, hearing none, we will march on. Okay. Linda, let's talk about budget transfers.
Okay. So these are the transfers that will close out the year. The request is to transfer funds, $87,000 to safety, sanitation, and upkeep of building and grounds, and $25,000 to site improvement. Those will bring those two categories of expenditures in line. And I'm asking that the funds come from the tuition line, $12,000, and from the medical account, $100,000. And that will close out the year so that all 7 categories of the budget are within budget.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions with respect to this, which is basically technical adjustments?
We will need a motion to this effect in your next meeting for the board to
Yeah.
take formal action on this in the full board meeting.
Yep. Okay.
Listed as item 9.4 on your next agenda.
Okay. I'll take care of that. All right. Well, I can see that we are blessed with Erica this month. Do you have some sort of a report for us?
You're muted, Erica.
Muted.
Thank you. Sorry, out of practice. I don't have a full financial report. I just have an update. Unfortunately, with the power outage last week, I was talking and trying to get the reports, but we couldn't get everything sent through. I just was able, they got power back today. So we're hoping to get it done as soon as possible. And I will help keep the meeting as a short meeting. I'm pretty much just working on everything for next year and all the menuing, all the staffing, forecasting out, and waiting for some state info. I do host a weekly meeting for all state directors. We get about 50 directors from across the state. So we've been giving each other lots of ideas, different ways to problem solve, and how to best be able to serve all the kids the best quality food. So that's all I have right now.
Okay.
Mr. Sands, can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Hi, Erica. So I imagine, like so many of the planning tasks as we head into the fall, yours is challenging as well in terms of, my guess is, right, that meal purchases from last year are not necessarily going to be a good indicator of what you need to deal with in the fall. And the question is, are there things that can be done to help that? I don't know, do we survey parents once we know that kids are coming, or I'm just trying to think of how you're thinking about that.
Yeah, and that's actually something we talked about in the meeting. So I did take a look at all of September's forecasting numbers for what we did this September of 2019, even on a good month. And then I'm taking those numbers and I brought them down by 20%, 30. And now I'm looking at them split in half for the 50-50. The only
Okay.
difference is when we open up for the meal pickup for this service, it won't be anything like what we did from March to June because that was free meals for all. And
Right,
anything that's picked up now has to be the free, reduced, or paid and get accounted to their physical accounts. So I think that's going
Okay.
to have a huge impact for us on participation and how many parents, when it's not free for all, where in sense they can't just walk up and grab a meal. It's totally different for this upcoming school year. They have to get qualified, they have to get claimed, they have to meet all the state requirements. So I think that's going to take a participation increase. I don't think we'll have as many coming for the grab and go as we previously did. So we're looking at those different numbers, factoring in what we think, how many people we expect to show up. I'm also waiting for a document from the state that's supposed to come out mid-August is what they told me last week. So that's going to have a lot of numbers on it. That's going to help me get an estimate of where we can go from there. So if that report comes back really high, then I'm going to know what our turnout could possibly be. If that report comes back and the numbers are lower than I expect, then I'll know. It's obviously our free and reduced that comes
Right.
directly from the state.
okay, okay.
So I'm kind of waiting for that report to gear those numbers to get an idea. But I am taking last year's numbers and forecasting them down for what I think will happen this year and keeping the menu and everything very simple.
So
So
just to
how-
clarify what you said, basically what you're saying is that in the Monday and Tuesday, and then the Thursday and Friday, given our hybrid model, you'll make a prediction or a guesstimate based on kids in the school building, and for kids who are remote on those days who are eligible for free and reduced lunch.
Nope, for all.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No problem. So
Okay.
anyone who's on remote learning, anyone can pick up. So we'll
Oh.
kind of take an estimate and then just kind of forecast, and then we'll reach out as parents to sign up ahead of time if they could. I've been researching an online ordering system if that will help us to get counts ahead of time. But just using those numbers
Okay, thank you.
to predict how
So
much food to buy.
Erica, walk me through, let's say that a parent has a child who's on the Monday, Tuesday schedule,
Yes.
and they're in third grade. How do you know whether that child wants one of your lunches? And how does the child know what they're going to get for lunch?
So
And how do we know who's paying for it?
It would go just pretty much what we did all of last year. So we have our meal viewer app. So the menu's posted. We would have the month of the menu calendar. If the student is in school, that in-school meal will be the same meal that's available for that daily pickup. So there'll be no difference. So let's just take, let's say it's a Friday. So it'll be pizza. So in school, we'll be serving pizza to students, and the pickup meal for that day in every building would be pizza. So the student could sign up in their homeroom class, say that they were going to eat, when we would be delivering a meal to the class to that student. And then if someone was coming to pick up, they could either call a school, order online, send an email, and say that they were going to pick up and come during that determined pickup time window, which would just be like a half hour a day at every building.
So while we are in the hybrid session, we will be running almost two different food services. One that replicates what we did all through March through June, serving community members who need it, the meals for pickup, and a very modified box lunch program that is very different than what we have done as school lunches in the past. But both of those will be happening essentially at the same time. Wednesday would be exterior pickup only,
Yeah.
but Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, we'd be running these two different programs at the same time out of the same kitchen.
Yeah.
Erica, will you guys be doing breakfast, or is it just going to be a lunch program?
It will be breakfast and lunch.
Okay.
So breakfast will be available for a grab and go item in the morning. And then if there was a need or a student wanted something, they could call down, and then we could arrange for either delivery or a pickup, depending on how it would work in that building. And the meals that are picked up will include breakfast and lunch will be in the combo kit automatically.
Okay, so if somebody orders lunch, they're also getting a breakfast if they're doing pickup that day?
If they're doing pickup, yes. They could pick
Okay,
up
and they'll
both
be
meals.
charged for both, even if they don't, say they didn't
No,
want breakfast, they don't,
if they don't want it, they don't have to take it. If
Okay.
they choose to, they can opt in, but it will be
Got it.
available to them.
okay.
Erica, how are you going to get the lunches into the classroom?
We're going to be delivering for K-8, we'll be delivering them into the classroom. We'll be delivering them to the classroom door in kind of paper bag style with just the milk being a choice.
And the lunch aides will be assisting with that.
And those bags will, depending on the meal count, so I'm using these forecasting numbers for exact, we would be writing the students' names on the bags. So then that way they can easily be identified for who's having what meal. I'm expecting my counts in September to be very low. I don't expect that we'll have a very high start. I think it's going to be a lot of growing and learning. So I don't expect to be overwhelmed in September delivering lots of meals, unfortunately.
We will be increasing staffing in both lunch aid and recess aid positions to provide more hands at all 7 at all 6 of the earlier grade locations.
Okay. Other questions? When you get the financials, could you give those to Linda or Jason so they could be circulated to the group rather than wait for the next meeting a month from now?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Any other questions for Erica? All right. Linda, let's talk tuition.
Okay, I didn't have time to put together the final report, but as you saw in the financials, we are a lot further under budget than we had originally anticipated. I think this is the first time in a long time that we can say that we are $100,000 plus under budget for tuition. I will put together the final report. I just didn't have time to do it for this meeting. And I haven't started one for the new year yet. Jason and I haven't even met to go through all the placements for this year yet.
Ted, if I can add, we're still in the process of, some settlement agreements, et cetera, that we're working through. So we'll have a better look at that in the next couple of weeks.
I understand that some of the schools we have been using have gone out of business. Is that correct?
One school where we had a few students placed has gone out of business. We are looking and seeking other placements for those students. There may be, frankly, some cost savings in the tuition from what we budgeted to what the new placement that we're looking at may be. So if everything, comes to fruition as planned, we should be in a good position with those 2 students.
Okay. But the other schools are okay?
Yes.
So far, yes.
Yep.
So far, Ted, we are still continuing placements as we did at the end of the school year for the students who are transitioning over, into the next grade level.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Scaziano?
This isn't a
Okay.
tuition, oh, sorry, Ted, I don't know,
Go
this is not a tuition question. Maybe Paul will speak to this more in the update, but I'm getting some questions from the community about students with IEPs and, how are they going to be selected for the beyond the 2-day-a-week program? And are those families already being reached out to? So if families haven't been reached out to, they should know that their student isn't going to be given more than the 2 days in school. I guess there's just some confusion about that.
Yeah, so any of those decisions would be made individually by PPT or in consultation with the case managers. I want to be really clear, there is no expectation that every single student with an IEP will be attending 4 days of school during these 4 or 5 weeks. We have a number of students who receive very specialized instruction or may be placed in specialized classrooms, and it's primarily those students who would likely be experiencing 4 days. So those would be individual conversations. They would be initiated by the students' case managers. They would involve the special education coordinators at that school level, and could involve the principal through scheduling. But yes, those would be individual decisions. And in many of those cases, those individual conversations have started. For instance, a high school student who receives a study skills period as the the sort of the totality of his or her IEP is likely not a student who would be coming to school 4 full days a week. That student would continue to receive support through that study period through the teacher who would be assigned to that period, very likely in a distance format, so that the child's not pulled out of class on the 2 days that they're physically in. We're looking to sort of stack anything that would have previously been a pull-out service into the 3 distance days, actually providing more adult contact during the 3 distance days and trying to minimize the time that students will be pulled out when they're actually physically in for those limited 2 days.
And if I can just stress what Paul said, we're really looking at this on an individual basis. So if there are specific questions that you're receiving, please encourage them to reach out to myself or the coordinator, and we're happy to work with them.
I have, yeah, I've pretty much said that to anyone who's asked the question, to speak to you or to CC Paul, and just, I assumed it would be on an individual basis, but I guess, families are preparing for the year, and just maybe there's some that aren't aware that they should be,
Right.
speaking to their coordinators. But thank you.
Okay. Linda, do we have some sort of a health insurance report?
So I do have it, and I apologize for not sending it out. I will send it out either after this meeting or first thing tomorrow morning. The claims for June were $591,769. With the admin fee, the total claims for June was $794,796, which is still well below what our previous claims have been. The stop loss, there was $1,369,000 of claims that were covered by the stop loss. That is still $416,852 under what the premium was. So we paid out more for the premium than we did for the claims. We've had very good luck with this over the years. This year is such an anomaly with everything. It was a blip. It's not a trend I expect to continue.
Right.
Look, I mean, the dragon has to eat once in a while.
That's true. So right now, the anticipated fund balance at June 30th is $6,473,644. Again, we expect claims to pick up.
Right.
We don't expect that to stay up that high. But
Right. We anticipate a bounce. We know, you've seen all over the news that people were not going in for medical procedures or follow-ups or contacts. So we do expect to see a rebound in some of those numbers as we come back this school year.
Although if people still are afraid to go to hospitals, it may still be the real costly stuff, and the optional medical services may still hold off for a while.
Right. I think it's difficult to anticipate when that rebound will occur, but I think it will occur at some point as people become more confident or those needs become more pressing.
And I will say that the elective surgeries may have, the elective surgeries were stopped by hospitals and surgeons. So that was not about people being fearful.
Right.
It was about those elective surgeries not being available. That has changed. They are being phased back in. Ted, your point is well taken. The medical community has certainly seen fewer people going for services that had been available because of some anxiety or fear. But certainly elective procedures, et cetera, there was just a complete stop in providing them. So I do think we're going to see an uptick. We're expecting
Oh,
it in
yeah.
the medical community. Yeah.
But I mean, look, we're going to have a lot of additional expenses this year. And the fact that the medical is behaving itself at the moment is just fine. Just fine. Okay, any other questions relative to the health insurance? Then let's put Cliff on the spot. What's going on? You've got a little less than a month. Well, it is exactly a month till we open. You going to be ready?
You want to start with an update on the tropical storm, Cliff, and then move into the work towards opening and project work?
Sure. So we fared pretty well for the tropical storm. We lost a few trees and limbs throughout the district. No damage caused by any of those trees. They all fell the right direction again. So we kind of lucked out there. We did have prolonged loss of power at 2 schools, Cox and Melissa Jones. Cox lost 2 out of 3 legs. So basically the building was shut down. And then for all those people up in North Guilford, they knew the amount of damage up there with the number of trees down and power lines. So that has been down until about 5:15 this morning. So I was told that they do have power now back at the school. Most of the systems are up and running. So we did notify our vendor that's working on the HVAC system to come back and start work again. So he is going to be, I believe, back on school grounds tomorrow to start working or continue working on the HVAC installation. All the heat pumps have been installed. They're working primarily now on the 2 major air handlers, trying to get those in place. So they're in, I feel that they're in a pretty good spot to open on time without any issues at that school. The electricians, I met with them last week while we didn't have power. It was actually a good time for them to get some work done. So, they isolated parts of the school that they're working in just in case, but they were able to do about 3 panels last week, and they have about 2 more to go to complete the work that they're doing. If everything goes on track, we hope later this week, possibly the electricians will be done replacing the panels for the HVAC work. So Jones is coming along nicely. The Melissa Jones window project is set to roll out. The plans and specifications have been put together, and all the hazardous material information has been incorporated into the bid. So most likely next month, that will go to the Standing Building Committee so they can review those plans and specifications. Really, we don't plan on bidding that out until after the first of the year. It'll be a summer project because we do know that we do have some asbestos in some PCB that we will have to do abatement work on. So I don't recall if I gave you guys the news regarding the test results with the PCBs. I know I gave it to the Standing Building Committee, but that came back as good news because it's only the windows themselves that have to be abated. So none of the surrounding blocks or infrastructure has to get replaced. So that was good news. Moving on to Baldwin Phase 2, as we know, Phase 1 is complete and closed out. Phase 2, they're working pretty aggressively to try to get the VAV boxes and heat pumps installed in the classrooms, bathrooms, and hallways for a couple of the sections. So they really want to get all that completed, closed up, and buttoned up prior to staff coming back. It's going to be a tight schedule. Many of the new units are much larger than the old units. They're not one-for-one replacements. Again, we're upgrading that system there to get better air quality, better circulation, and better control. So as part of doing that, the units themselves had to be upgraded. So they're much larger. They'll provide better heating and cooling capabilities. So I walked through with the engineers the last couple of weeks working out some of the kinks, but that's where we stand right now is we're really targeting to get everything that's in any areas where staff or students would be, have that completed, so that we can have those hopefully turned on, circulating air. They probably won't have cooling in those areas when we start up school, at least not through our system. So I did meet last week, started looking at bringing in cooling and ventilation, especially in the areas that will have no cooling and ventilation, and that would be the orchestra room and the gym, because those are larger units and they're not being replaced until sometime in about September into October. So we'll be putting temporary units outside the gym, which will feed fresh air, heating and cooling to the gym. We'll be putting a second unit outside of the band room, which will also provide heating and cooling there as well. And both those will have their own generators and run on their own power. So we are trying to accommodate to ensure that everybody in the school has, proper ventilation, sufficient ventilation, heating and cooling. So we're pushing forward with that. So that one, from day one, schedule wise, was not going to be completed for the, September 1st. We knew we were going to have to do a lot of this work, especially after we really got into the classroom work and the hallway work and realized that we have to shuffle and move a lot of stuff around to make stuff fit. So we're actually taking units out of the hallways and putting them in classrooms because there's a lack of space above the ceiling. So there's a lot of additional, kind of on the fly engineering that has to go into play when we're doing some of this work. So that's where we stand with Baldwin. I don't know if anyone has any questions specific to Baldwin before I move to other projects, just because that is a big project. If not, I will continue rolling along. And Calvin Leet, we did receive all the doors, the new doors and the lock hardware. So our goal is, we'll say, hopefully the goal is we will finish installing a lot of the plexiglass dividers in the front entrances to all the schools. And then as soon as we're done with that, we're moving on to the doors. We expect the doors to take probably 3 to 5 days. Hopefully, once we get a system rolling, those doors will be installed pretty quickly. But we do have them on hand. They will be installed before school starts if everything stays on track. So that project's moving along well. The Adams parking lot is kind of draining me. Every time I turn around, they hit something, and not bad hit, they just find something. So they called me on Saturday. We were working on Saturday and trying to get the conduit in. They hit a big piece of ledge out in the front of Adams. I never even thought there was ledge out there. I thought it was all just backfilled. So they had to jackhammer through that nice little piece. They were successful in doing that over the weekend. They called me out today because they hit another gas line. They weren't sure where it was going to. There seems to be a lot of utilities that were not removed. And when I say hit, they didn't actually damage it. They found it and dug around it until I was able to come out, and we determined that, yes, it was a deadline. We've since cut it out. So in the future, if somebody happens to trench along the same lines, they won't bump into it again. So we removed that. They hope to be done in the next day or so doing our work, and that's trenching to really the corner near the transformer. At that point, that's where we're going to put the new splice box in and tie in the old and the new electrical for Adams. Tricky part is once we get to that point, it's strictly up to Eversource to do the tie-in. Obviously, we don't have the capabilities of cutting out the existing electrical and splicing and all that. That has to go through Eversource. So we have depending on how you look at it, a proposed date of the 13th. Now, whether or not Eversource is going to hold true to that date, I don't have my fingers crossed that that's going to happen, only with knowing the amount of damage and everything out around the state. So I am hoping maybe by some slim chance they have a different crew that does new utilities versus the old repairs and that type of thing. So we're trying to get more information from Eversource on where we stand with that installation. So if we manage to hold to the 13th, it does give us, what is that, about 3 weeks. I still think it's probably a little tight and aggressive to try to tear up the entire parking lot and lay a new parking lot in that time frame. It might be in our best interest to unfortunately postpone the actual paving project till the summer of 2021. So again, it depends how hard you want me to push. You know, Paul, I don't know what your input is on that one. I just kind of threw that out there to everybody. So that's where we are with the Adams parking lot. The last thing I have on my list is the facility needs assessment. And Ted Sands was at the last standing building committee meeting. We had a special meeting where we went over the facility needs assessment or facilities condition assessment with sight lines. I think they did a good presentation. They went through a lot of good details. You know, our backlog has shrunk significantly. We still do have a backlog, as we all well know. You know, we got the various heating and cooling systems, you know, like Guilford Lakes and Cox still out there that have to get done. And then as part of that, they did their evaluation back in about April. So, you know, we weren't in the middle of phase 2 of Baldwin, and we were kind of just starting up or pushing along with Melissa Jones. So those two aren't even kind of incorporated in there. They're still on the have to get done list versus the completed list. So it might be something that, you know, as I talk to Sightlines, we can kind of push that or rearrange it so that the numbers come out a little more favorable to where we stand versus where we were even, you know, 6 months ago or 4 months ago, because we've done a lot of work since then. So it is a good report. So we're working on putting together a final report. Once we have that done, we will schedule a meeting with, you know, all the various committees, you know, the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, Board of Ed, Standing Building Committee, and have a final presentation for everybody so everybody can see that information. And we'll have a new proposed capital list. We'll develop a capital list out of that information. That's everything in a nutshell.
Let's go back to the Adams parking lot. My understanding is that is going to be a key item of trying to reduce the traffic congestion, especially since we're asking parents to be dropping their kids off. I don't see why we would want to put that off until next summer, but Paul, I mean, it's your choice, but boy, I think we should push on that one.
It was a plan that predated COVID. It was something that we were working on well before any of these concerns. It actually came out of work that stemmed from the start time work and looking at being more efficient with all of those entrance and exit locations. It's something that we'll, you know, Jason and Cliff and I will talk about offline if we can make it happen for this year. But right now, with the power loss, with the loss of, it's going to be more than a week that we lose Eversource's availability. You know, we'll do what we can do, Mr. Sands. We'll certainly do what we can do, but we won't be able to accomplish the impossible.
Well, but even if we don't have it for the first week, I mean, you know, when we're in the hybrid form, the traffic is not going to be as bad as it's going to be when we open up full. I mean, we shouldn't just shelve this project if we have to wait for Eversource, et cetera. But I mean, before we get to 100% loading of Adams, I think we should have that parking lot, that parking area ready to go.
You're exactly right. On October 19th, we will double at least the parent traffic as we move to the target date. So we'll keep working with that. We'll see if it's possible to work evenings or weekends and keep moving towards that date. Again, I just have to admit that Cliff and Jason and I have not had an opportunity to look at this all together since the storm. So we'll have to reassess and see where it leaves us. You're absolutely right. There's a soft opening and then a firmer opening pushed back to that October 19th date. Yep.
Yeah, one of the challenges is obviously going to be, in order to do that work, I have to shut down the complete north end of that building.
Right.
So I can't isolate a part of it. I've got to shut down the complete thing. So that's your primary teacher parking up there. The bulk of it is up there. So we'd really have to evaluate, you know, where to push the teachers to. And again, it might be that there's less teachers and maybe we can possibly use the field or something of that nature, weather dependent. But, you know, we'll look at it further.
Does make it difficult to do that with evenings or weekends because of the nature of the disruption of pulling out a parking lot, but we will look at it and we will see what's possible. And we will think with the two different staggered openings in mind as we make those assessments.
Okay. Any other questions of Cliff? All right. Thank you, Cliff. Did anybody have any communications? I don't have any relative to the operations committee.
I'll share one that I received. Dr. Balistraci lost her power in the middle of this meeting. It's why we don't see her with us currently. I believe she is relocating to Lathrop House so that she will be available for the 7:30 full board meeting.
Okay.
Seems that Eversource is going backwards.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else to come before the operations committee? Hearing that, none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So Mrs. Sullivan motion and Dr. Best second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. That motion passes. We are adjourned at 6:53.
We'll see you all again at 7:30. Thank you very much.
Paul, you have a second?